I have a stack of 10 different test exercises. Let's rank them for hypertrophy. For the evaluation, I'm going to use two criteria: how easy it is to approach failure on the pecs without other muscles failing first, and the resistance profile of the exercise. More specifically, exercises that are loading the pecs on their lengthened position are going to be favored. Starting with a flat dumbbell press. If you don't go too heavy and target the 10 to 20 rep range, then stability shouldn't be an issue and approaching failure should be relatively easy. Also, the exercise has a great resistance profile since torque is max in the bottom of the movement when you can achieve a great stretch on your pecs. I'll give it an A+, and if stability wasn't an issue, then I would easily go for an S. Moving on to the flat bench press. It's definitely steadier than dumbbells, and approaching failures should be relatively easier since you don't have to balance its arms separately, but the range of motion is limited in the lower half of the movement. This means that you cannot really stretch your pecs as much as in other chest exercises, and due to that, I'm gonna go with an A-. A great alternative to that would be using a camber bar, which gives you the same stability but allows you for that deep stretch in the bottom. Moving on to the incline bench press. The main difference with flat is that your position allows you for a deep stretch without limiting your range of motion. This, along with the relative stability that the bar provides, makes the incline bench press one of my favorite exercises, and it's top tier. The hex press. Well, anatomically wise, the arm placement favors the triceps, and you really need to put the effort to push with your chest. Also, the reps are basically shortened partials that are suboptimal for hypertrophy. Just don't do it. Go for a Smith machine alternative instead. It's a D. The floor press. It's basically an inferior version of the normal presses, since they provide less stability due to the posture of the body and less range of motion, as they don't allow you to perform the bottom, more hypertrophic part of the movement. There they go. One more classic favorite, the bended elbow pec deck, which I cannot really find any reason for it to exist since it provides very limited range of motion because you don't have the option to bend your elbows on the bottom of the movement and stretch your pecs even more. On top of that, your shoulder mobility limits the range of motion and does not allow you for a deep stretch. Even though it is steady, the overall movement feels a bit weird, so I will give it a B-. Instead, you can try the straight arm pec deck, which is just as steady and lets you stretch your pecs because the shoulder mobility is not an issue here. One downside is that the resistance profile of this machine is not the best. In the bottom half of the movement, you have to bend your elbows in order to stretch your pecs properly. This reduces the distance between the handle and the center of rotation, and that causes the torque to be lower when your pecs are in the lengthened position. This basically means that the lower part of the movement is lighter than the top part. Small detail, but it's good to be mentioned. For this reason, I'm gonna go with an A- here. If you have a machine like that feels really great on your pecs, you can try doing lengthened partials in order to mitigate this flow. Another alternative is a dumbbell fly, and I will go with a solid A+ here. If performed correctly and with small loads, reaching failure on the pecs shouldn't be hard. What I love about these flies is that the bottom part of the movement, where the pecs are stretched, is heavier, and as you progress through the rep, the resistance becomes progressively less until it's zero. This can also be utilized for integrating lengthened partials in your training program and basically work the movement only in its bottom half. Next on the list, machine presses. I cannot really rank this exercise since it really depends on the machine. I have worked with machines that are great and with others that are shitty. I would say that they can range from B to S depending on how the machine is built, how adjustable it is, and what is the resistance profile of the movement. And finally, dips. I'm gonna go with an A here, since the movement is relatively steady and failure is relatively easy to be approached. Also, they're providing a great stretch under load. I'm not giving it an S, since triceps can take over the movement easily. Now that you got the idea, let's throw some more exercises in the ranking, so you get a rough estimate of what you should avoid. As you can see, there are two distinct zones in my ranking: the great zone and the mech zone. Since the great zone has enough exercises for you to hit all the angles of your pecs with a great variety. There is no reason to include inferior exercises to your program, as if building muscle wasn't already hard enough. Also, the fact that some exercises from the great basket are theoretically slightly better than others doesn't mean that you should only pick those. The factor for selecting exercises over others shouldn't be a marginal theoretical benefit, but instead how they work on your body in any given period, and if they actually make sense in the context of your programming and prioritization. Try to see what works best for you. Evaluate your exercises based on how they feel while they're performed, if they pump your targeted muscle during and right after your training, and if they make you sore the days after. And most importantly, make sure that you are progressing in a regular basis. Switch to an alternative exercise only if some of these are lacking, and pay attention mainly to your progress, especially if you have only a few years of lifting experience. Go for variation and integrate flat and incline presses and at least one flying movement on your weekly program. Stick around with each exercise at least for a couple of months. Try to master the execution and make adjustments until they feel right. Instead of trying to find S-tier exercises, pick those that feel and work best for you and master them in order to get the best possible results out of them. Remember that it's not the individual exercise that will make you bigger. It is what you are able to get out of it that will make the change. Train strictly and hard, and don't overthink it. Drop a like, subscribe, and don't fall for exercise tiers. Learn how to distinguish the good from the bad exercises, and keep in mind that each good exercise might have its role in your programming. Cheers!